You've actually written about like how do we start to transition, I forget if it was like BDR or SDRs into customer development rep roles, folks that focus on like building that network of fans and people that have like a similar problem. And we just kind of like band together and we like talk shop and we share solutions and maybe organically we discover certain tools. Cause like I've purchased SaaS software from those communities, like dark social communities where someone is just like, hey, I want advice on like finding a tool that's really good at lead scoring. And I actually look at the recommendations. Like I'll join a Slack channel and I'll like search for certain keywords or something that I'm looking for or pain that I have. And I see folks organically recommending stuff. Like I value that a lot more than,
Yeah.
some of the other channels there. But yeah, maybe chat about that a little bit, like that, like transition
I
from SDRs to CDR.
Well, for starting, I don't think people realize how much of their sales and marketing initiatives are working because of that dark social stuff. They're like,
Mm,
whoa, the ad worked. And you're like, no, no, no. The ad worked because the person had already asked in the
yeah.
community and heard about you, and the ad reminded them. But they didn't just like see an ad and go, ooh, I'll go spend 50 grand. I saw an ad. Cool. Right. Like that's just not how humans work. And I can't remember the source. I have to double check it and like add a little like voice note into this after the fact, be like, oh, this is the source. But that 84% of B2B purchases start with some form of referral,
Mm,
some form of reference referral. Like you post on LinkedIn, you see a recommendation, you ask someone directly, you get an intro request, whatever it is. Like if anybody listening to this thinks back with the last 10 things they bought, like really think about like, yeah, they might have cold called you, they might have cold emailed you, but what was the actual thing that led you to pull the trigger on that purchase? I bet you 8 out of 10 of those, it was someone you trusted said something, and that led to you actually being interested in doing it. Um, so anyways, I know a bit of sidebar to the SDR to NDR. So we used to call it a community development rep,
mhm.
which is where the CDR came from, and we've evolved it into the network development rep, mostly just to stay on brand. And I will say when we shared that playbook like 6 months ago, a bunch of people were like, "This is just what good SDRs and BDRs do anyway." And I was like, "Yeah, that's kind of the point." Um, like the branding is really like, I'm not saying you should go actually change the titles of your roles. It was really just like if I'd written a book saying like, here's the SDR playbook, you'd be like, cool, whatever. But like the NDR network development, would be like, huh, interesting. Like it's a marketing stunt. It catches your
Yeah,
attention,
yeah.
right? But it kind of goes also back to this idea of like, should you be leveraging network or should you be leveraging intent signals? Um, and I think what we wrote about in that is that basically there's two halves to an NDR's job. If somebody is like, hey, I want to buy right now, yeah, sell to them. Don't try to just like build a go sell to that person. If they fill out a website form, if they indicate like an actual intent signal, do not beat around the bush because you will lose that
Yeah,
deal.
yeah.
But like the classic thing, right? Like only 5 to 10% of your buyers are actually doing that at any given time. So with the other 90%, instead of trying to sell to them and like you said, hope that two of them are like, cool, yeah, I'll buy, and you just rinse and repeat. How do you actually build a network that compounds on itself? And the thing I always like to share is what happens if you stop paying for ads? Stops working. What happens if you stop paying to make cold calls? You get no results. You stop paying to do cold emails. You get zero results. What happens if you stop building a network or a community or whatever you want to call it? What you've built already exists and it'll keep growing. It'll keep
Mm,
compounding on itself. It's like it builds on itself. So it is a thing that can take longer to pay off than making the cold calls or doing the cold emails or the outbound. But it's one of those things like once that flywheel gets going, man, it's borderline magical. It's like it just things are a lot easier. And even if you are still doing cold calls and cold email, if you've built a good brand, you built a good community, you built a network, that recognizability is going to make the cold stuff a lot easier.
mm.
And what do you mean like network development representative? Like what does their day to day look like? Are they so they're not doing mass outreach,
Yeah.
buying lists and whatever, you know? But are they more of like having these discovery conversations? Are they like educating people? Like what?
So I think this is the hard part is that it's like the SDR has been relegated to this like junior role, right? Get a list, make calls, good luck, have fun. An NDR, I think, can't. I mean, they could be a junior role, but it's not a role you can just be like, you can't train them in like a week and say good luck, have fun.
Okay.
Um, I think an NDR has to be given space to actually understand the market, understand the buyer, have conversations, like not conversations to sell, but just go out to have conversations with customers, learn them, actually understand the space. I will say, I think an NDR is better off sitting under marketing. I think honestly, all SDRs, BDRs are they're a marketing function, not a sales function, but that's also a hotly debated topic, I think, right now. Their day-to-day is really about starting by being able to like segment who's a buyer and who's not right now. Once again, that could be a combination of signals, intent stuff, whatever. And you have two different plays. If they're buying, go sell, do your discovery calls, do your normal stuff. If they're not, it's all about how do you build relationships at scale. So that could be if your audience, if your buyers are on LinkedIn, how do you social sell? And not necessarily in a way that's like, I was just chatting with someone who sells to HR. They're a salesperson. They are not an HR rep. They are never going to post thought leadership content on LinkedIn that's going to get an HR person to like trust them, right? But what they have found is they've spoken to enough HR leaders. They understand the problems they have because they've been given the space to actually become like at least like an adjacent subject matter expert in their space, which, by the way, is what all your sellers should be able to do anyways, regardless of what you call them, what their day-to-day looks like. And what they have found is they create memes about HR and the pain points that recruiters are having. And like, so they're like, I'm never going to get a recruiter to listen to me about how they should implement their recruiting strategy, but I understand them enough that I can post humorous things to build relationships and get their attention and do that sort of stuff. So they're essentially finding ways to connect and build relationships in a non-salesy way. It could be stuff like when we were a community company, we had a huge community. We had our SDRs. The first touch point was just inviting people to join our community, not talking about our product, just like, hey, get into the community. We're doing this event next week. Do you want to come in? They would like, and we actually had them own that relationship. Their job was to get someone into the community and get them engaged within 30 days. So they were almost like the community onboarding expert. And then guess what? When that person in 6 months is like, you know what? I want to buy Commsor. They'd be like, hey, John SDR, who got me into the community, built this relationship with me. Like, I really want to learn about the tool now. And now they go back and they start a buying process.